Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing story coming to us from the US. We have Justin Bush on board today. Born in Lower Delaware and author of the book Violence Will Not Be Tolerated, an Alien Abduction Story. Alien abductee Justin Bush shares with us his lifelong encounters with extraterrestrial beings such as greys, tall whites, and insectoids. He takes us deep into the terrifying and profound moments that shaped his life, including being abducted with his father and having objects implanted into his body. Justin questions whether he is an unknowing participant in a multi-generational genetic or testing program orchestrated by the Greys. His experiences reveal disturbing patterns and possibly a structured agenda. So, Justin, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's start from the beginning. At what age did your experiences start, and what actually happened?
I honestly don't really know. My father told me, my mother said the same thing. They said to me that when I was really young, I would come to them and tell them things. My father's exact words were he said, "You would tell us things that would make your hair stand on end and turn white." So it's like a euphemism, like when somebody gets scared really bad or whatever. But he said that it was like young. The first memory I ever have of any of this stuff, I was probably about 3 or 4 years old. It's my very first memory. My parents were kind of it was right before they got divorced when I was 4, so my mom left. Well, technically she left for a while. They tried it again, but anyway, but she left when I was 4. So I was probably either late 3 years old, early 4 years old. But they got in a fight and my mom left, and she would normally leave for a few hours and come back. They would like blow up at each other, and she would leave, go to her sisters or wherever, and she'd come back. So my dad had put us to bed, and I was sitting at the end of the bed, just looking out the window at the driveway, hoping my mom would come home. And so I was just sitting there holding the headboard, just waiting, and normally I could see like her headlights come around the corner. So I was just kind of looking for her headlights, and I saw it was kind of a big window. And so I'm really, how kids push their face. So my face is like right up against the window, and I see just kind of a blur of movement like this on my right periphery. And so when I turned, I didn't see anything. It almost looked like something had ducked down on that corner. But my first thought was it must be an animal of some kind. So we grew up in the woods. My grandfather's a farmer. So we would cut down trees and stuff. So my first thought was like it must be an opossum because it was kind of a white gray blur when it moved. So I grabbed the headboard and stood up to try to get a better angle on it to see what it was. And then as I stood up, it popped its head up. And so now I'm like inches from this thing's face. And it started talking to me, but it didn't move its lips. So it was a typical gray alien. This is my first memory of seeing one. I don't know, my dad says, maybe there were other times, but this is my first memory. So it starts talking to me, and I'm immediately just confused. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand how it's talking. I mean, I could hear it in my mind or whatever, but I don't understand what's going on. And I got scared. I don't remember what it said to me. I don't even remember that. I remember it was, when someone says something to you, and you're so lost in thought that you really don't even pay attention to the words they were using. I think it told me not to be afraid, something to that effect, like do not be afraid. We mean you no harm, stuff like that. But the truth is that I was just freaking out in my mind, like, what is this thing? And then I blacked out. And when I woke up, it was the next day, and I was in a hiding spot. So my dad when he would wake us up, he would go room for room and open the door and yell at us. And so he had opened the bedroom door and yelled my name. He didn't see me, so he just assumed that I must be in my brother's room or something. So he was going around the house yelling my name, and that's what woke me up. And I couldn't move. From my hips down were completely like asleep, like I couldn't feel anything. So I woke up when he yelled, and I was like, "Where am I?" My first thoughts were like, "Where am I?" And then I remembered, and I was like, oh, I was trying to hide from that thing. And then I started kind of panic because I realized my legs weren't working. So I started trying to claw my way out. So what I did was, I used to do this all the time when I was smaller, but I slid backwards underneath the headboard and crouched down. So the headboard is like right above you, and the mattress is kind of here where your face is. And that used to be one of my hiding spots when we were like play, like hide and go seek and stuff. But I must have blacked out or fell asleep or something, because like everything, I was squatted down, everything from my hips down wouldn't work, so I couldn't even use my legs. So I started clawing at the bedspread trying to pull myself out, and once I got my belly up and the blood came back to my legs, I kind of kicked off the wall and slid out. And then by that time my dad had come back around and opened the bedroom door. He didn't find me anywhere else, so he opens the door and he goes, "Oh, there you are." He said, you need to eat breakfast. I'm going to work." And so I walk out there, and that's when my mom came in, and they got in a little fight, an argument. And he was like, "Where were you last night?" And she was like, "I went to my sister's." And he was like, "Are you going to be here to watch these kids or what?" He's like, "I got to go to work." She's like, "Yes, yes." And he's like, "We'll talk about this later." And he boom slammed the door, and he left. But that's my very first time seeing him. Um, I had to be, I was definitely younger than 5 because my mom left at 4. Um, I'm guessing I was either like, I'm right in that between 4 and kind of area, between 3 and 4 is where it was, somewhere in there. But yeah, it's first time.
Are you aware if your brother ever was visited?
I have, so I've got 2 regular brothers, 2 biological brothers with the same mom, and then I ended up with 4 stepbrothers later on. My dad got remarried, so there's 7 of us. I know for a fact that my older brother was there several times when things happened. I don't know if he ever got abducted or anything like that. I don't even know if he's ever seen an alien. I know that he's been present for UFO encounters, but I don't know if he's been abducted. I know that my younger brother and my oldest stepbrother were also there during another UFO encounter. But once again, so that happened later. But basically, it was I I saw an alien. So I got abducted, and then they let me go. And then when they flew away, my family saw the UFO fly away. So they just saw the UFO. They didn't participate. It would not surprise me if my older brother had gotten abducted. It wouldn't, because I don't want to speak for him, but the way he acts about it, the way he treats it, like he won't even talk about the UFO he saw. Like he will literally do this. If we see each other, he will look around and make sure nobody's listening, and he'll go, "What do you think that thing was?" Like he refuses to even talk. It's almost like he's scared of it, or I don't want to speak for him, but it would not surprise me if he's been abducted. But I just can't. As far as I remember, I've never been abducted with him, so I just don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me. In fact, if you ask me, just guess, like, is the answer yes or no? My best guess would be yes. I would assume that he, I think I believe that he probably has, but I just can't say that. Like I never seen it. I seen one time I saw my mother and father get led down the hallway by these creatures. My bedroom door was open. I woke up. I saw them kind of like zombies, kind of walking down the hallway. Um, but that's it. That's all that happened. I woke up, saw that. One of the creatures looked in on me. I blacked out. I don't even usually tell people about that because it's such a small. You know what I mean? Like it's not enough to there was no evidence. It's just, and I was young, and it was such a small amount of time that I don't, they manipulate you. You have missing time, all sorts of stuff. So I'm really cautious about believing even my own experiences, especially when it's a very small amount of information like if you can't remember, it's okay to just say, look, I think something happened, but I really don't know. But I do remember them being let out one night. And it's just a few seconds of memory. I remember I was terrified. Had my blanket and I was so scared. Um, and watching them, and I was like, you're a kid and you don't understand what's going on, and it's really scary. But then I immediately blacked out after that, and I have no other memory of what happened that night. It wouldn't surprise me if they took him too that night, or maybe they even took me. I don't know.
Now, so during those, that time period between like 3.5 and 5, do you recall if the gray ever came back?
Yeah, I got abducted during the day, actually. So when I talk about manipulation, there's a lot of this. I don't even know what you want to call it. Telepathic, precognitive. You know, there are other word people give it a name. I can't even think of a name to call it. But when you're being influenced from like a foreign or unknown kind of situation, um, but anyway, so I was young. I think I was 4. Maybe I had turned 5. It's possible, but I was about that age. My mother was gone, and so once my dad and mom separated, I started to get watched by my grandmother. That's how I know about the age I was. That and my brother was there, so I know how old he. You know what I mean? Like when you have siblings, you can kind of gauge how your memories based on their ages and stuff like that. But anyway, so I'm at my grandmother's house. I wanted to go to my aunt's, who's her next door neighbor, and so I asked her, and I was like, "Can I go over my aunt Peggy's house?" And she was like, "If you eat your lunch," she was like, "I will let you go and play video games at your aunt's house." And so she served lunch every day, the exact same time, breakfast at the exact same time, lunch, dinner, every day. My grandfather was a farmer, so he would eat at like 6:30 in the morning. He would come back at some days he would come home, and some days he wouldn't. But she had him lunch served at 11 o'clock every day. Dinner was at 4:30 every day. When he walked in that front door, dinner was ready 4:30 on the dot. So so she had sat me down for lunch. My grandfather didn't come in that day from the fields or whatever, so he was out there. But she sat me down for lunch, and she was like, "You eat this, you can go." So I ate as fast as I could, and then she was like, "Okay," and she walked me to the front door, and she stood there and watched me walk away. But she waited until I rounded the corner, and once I go around the corner of my aunt's house, she can't see me, you know. So anyway, I knock on the front door and nobody answers. So I'm just standing there for like 2 or 3 minutes. I knock again. My aunt never answered the door. So as I'm standing there waiting, all of a sudden I got this, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, influence or psychological influence. I don't know. But it was like, I need to go into the woods where me and my dad shot BB guns. Like, I need to go. My dad had taken me and my brother to shoot. He bought my older brother a BB gun, and he took us to a very specific spot to shoot it. And it was like, I need to go there now. And I don't know why. It's a mile away, by the way. It's a good distance for a 4 or 5 year old to walk by themselves. I just started going. And I get on the road. I get about halfway there, and it's just fields on both sides. So it's kind of like a little back road and some fields. And when I'm about halfway there, this old man pulls up in like probably an Oldsmobile kind of Cadillac, an older car. And he pulls up next to me, he rolls his window down. He's driving real slow as I'm walking. And he's like, "Hey, where are you going?" And I was like, I don't know why, but the same thing happened where I just lied to him. And I just pointed at the nearby house and I said, "I'm going to my aunt's house." And he was like, "Well, where are your parents at?" And I was like, "They're at work." And he was like, "Well, hop in." And I got this really, really bad feeling. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. I was a kid, so I'm used to, you know, I'm a kid. I don't even have a thought of somebody doing something to me. but I got this feeling like I can't go with this man. Like something, if I go with this man, something bad's gonna happen. And so I was like, he asked me to get in, and I was like, no, thank you. And I just cut across the grass and just started walking into this lady's house. So if I had just walked 10 or 15 more feet, I could have turned on her driveway. I immediately just cut across her yard and started going towards her back door. She is not a relative. She is not my aunt. Oh, and by the way, when I lied, when I told him I was going to my aunt's house, like I immediately was like, why did I say that? Like I couldn't understand why I would lie. Like I didn't understand. The influence itself, it happens, and even you are like, why is this happening? Or like even you don't understand what's going on. So I immediately cut across. I started going up to her back door, and he stopped on the roadway and watched me. I cut the corner of her house. I immediately dropped down on my hands and feet and crawled behind. She had a hedge of bushes that went from the backside of her house all the way up the side and around the front. But there was a section where there was no bushes, where her back door was, and then around to the other side. So I dropped down and started crawling under the bushes. I have no idea why I'm doing any of this. I'm just doing it. Like I really don't know why. So I crawl under the bushes and I go around the side of the house and I just lay there for a second. And I just watch him. He pulled forward a little bit, stopped again. He backed up like he was going to come up into the driveway, but he never did. He backed up a little bit, stopped. He was just staring, looking around, like just looking. You know, it, you know, I don't know what he was doing. We could all speculate, but he was just. It was almost like he was looking for me and just trying to see if he could see me again. See where I went or whatever. But then all of a sudden, after a few minutes, I don't know if he just got frustrated or maybe he was sizing up like what he was going to do but he left. And I waited. I watched him. So the road goes down, it bends off to the left, and then there's a few small side streets. So it's like fields, 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 and then it gets to this teeny tiny little development with maybe like I don't even know, might not even be 30 houses, and each side street might have I don't know 4 or 5 houses on it or something. So he came down, and I could watch him from under the bush. He came down and he made a right hand turn the very first side street. I waited for a few extra minutes and just to make sure he didn't turn around. And then I crawled out of the bush, walked back onto the road, and kept going because I still had this impulse that I need to go to where we shot BB guns. So I just kept walking. So I walk another half mile. There's a field of corn, and there's a dirt road, and then there's a row of trees. It splits off, and the dirt road leads back into the woods. So I cut over onto the dirt road. I get to where we shot BB guns. So I get there and I stop, and immediately the impulse is gone. Like the moment that I did what I was supposed to do, or whatever you want to call it, it just like disappeared, and I started panicking. And I was like, why did I do this? I'm going to get beat so bad. And I'm just like, why, I'm going to get in trouble. Like I'm panicking. I'm like, I don't understand why I just did this. My dad's going to find out. My grandmother's going to find out. My grandpa's going to beat me. My dad's going to beat me. Like they're farmers and stuff. Like you get a wallet. Like, they're going to pull down a stick from a tree and start smacking you. And if I was at my grandmother's house, it was even worse because my grandfather would come home and I get a beating from him. And then he'd wait till my dad got home, and then I get a beating from my dad. So if you messed up at grandma's house, you got a double beating. So I'm like panicking. And then all of a sudden it was like over here. And so I just turned, and it's probably maybe 100 yards, maybe less, maybe 70, but about, let's call it 100. The dirt road goes back to a second field that's surrounded by trees. And then there's a thin hedge of trees, like here's the road, and then here's the trees right here, like that, right? Right behind those trees, I can see a silver tube with just like, I don't know, maybe a few feet sticking out, maybe 7, 8, 10 feet. I don't know. But I see it and I immediately go, what is that? I don't know what I'm looking at. So I was like, maybe it's my grandfather because my grandfather's truck is silver and I can just barely see it poking out. So I really don't know what it is. So I started walking close to it thinking, I'm going to tell my grandfather that I walked out here and asked for him to take me home. And I'm going to have to take my beating. But I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go to my grandfather. As I started getting closer, and as your perspective changes, I'm seeing more and more of the craft. And I realize immediately it's not my grandfather. Like it's round. After I got close enough, you could see a doorway that was open. You could see the legs it was landed on. It had these metal kind of pole legs with a foot on the bottom. So it had like a little flap kind of that it was sitting on, and then a pole leg. So at that point, I'm like, what is this? Like, I kept getting closer because I was just confused at what I was looking at. Like, I don't think I was being influenced at the time or anything. I was like, oh, maybe my grandfather. And then I was like, that's not my grandfather. And then I was like, what is that? I've been out in these fields my whole life. I've never seen something like that. So my life was very short, but, it was normal for us. So I get closer, and then when I get a few yards away, and this is just a perfectly smooth kind of, it's a very oval shape on every, you know, thing. Somebody asked me if it was a disc, and I told them I don't know, but I don't think it was a solid tube. It seemed to have some almost like an oval egg shape, like a perfectly symmetrical egg would probably be more accurate because it wasn't flat on the side. I don't think it was a disc. But anyway, so I'm getting closer, and then all of a sudden I kind of black out. It's almost like my memory's been interrupted. So I'm getting closer. I'm like, what is that? And then boom, I'm standing right underneath. It's got stairs, an arched doorway. I'm literally at the foot of the stairs. Like if I took one step up, my feet would be on them. And there's two gray aliens, one on my left, one on my right, real close to me. And then there's one just a few feet above me. He's standing on the very top step of the stairs. And they're talking to me. And then I black out again. So it's like boom and then boom. And then when I wake up the second time, I'm in a field. So I'm just standing in a soybean field and I don't know where I'm at. So I start panicking. I'm like, where am I? And I'm looking around. I don't recognize the field. I've never been in that field before. And then all of a sudden, I got that influence again. And the best way for me to describe this is my grandfather had me in the truck and we were going to do chores in the woods, right? And he said to me, he's driving, and he said to me, if you ever get lost in a field, he said, you need to walk to the edge of the field. He's like, when you get to the edge of the field, go around in a circle until you find a road. He said, every farmer has to have a road to enter the field with their equipment. And he said, just make sure you don't hurt any of the plants because that's how a farmer makes his living. And he also said something like, you ever go into a cornfield and you can't see because the corn's too high. But anyway, it was that exact sentence. And it was as if somebody was sitting with us in that truck and took out a tape recorder and recorded his exact words and then telepathically broadcast it to me. So I'm hearing his voice, and he's like, if you ever get lost in a field, make your way to the edge and walk around until you find a road. He said, once you find the road, you'll find your way home. And this hits me. And so immediately I was like, okay. And I just started doing it. I walked across the field. I got to the edge. It was wet in some spots. There were some puddles here and there. It wasn't soaked. It was just, they had some spots that retained a little bit of water. And I was apologizing to the plants. This is how young I was. He told me not to touch the plants. And I was so young that I thought he meant don't touch them. Like, not like don't trample them, like physically don't touch them. So when I was trying to get through the rows, the plants were rubbing up against me and I was apologizing to them. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was apologizing to the plants because he said that if you touched them, you would hurt them. And so that's how young I was, is that I literally didn't understand part of what he told me. So I'm apologizing to these soybeans, walking through the rows, trying to get to the edge. And then when I finally got to the edge, there is a road, like a dirt, there's usually a buffer around the edge for tractors and stuff. So I get to that buffer and I start walking. And you know how kids get kind of stare at their feet when they're walking. So I'm looking at my feet, just walking, not paying attention at all. And I hear this banging sound getting louder, but I'm confused. I'm literally looking at my feet and I'm like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know what happened. I don't know where I'm at. So I'm staring at my feet, walking confused, and there's this sound. I can hear it, but not I'm not even paying attention to what it is. And then all of a sudden I hear someone yell, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I look up and turn, and it's my cousin. And and she goes, "What are you doing back there?" And I go, "I don't know." And she's like, "Where did you come from?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she was like, "Where are you supposed to be?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "What?" She was like, come here. I'll help you." I was so short. So the field, and then there's a ditch that's a pretty shallow, pretty deep ditch. I was so small at that time that I could not walk down the ditch by myself. So my cousin walked over, climbed the ditch, picked me up, and then walked down the ditch with me and then sat me down. And then she was like, "Where are you supposed to be?" And then my brother was there. So my grandmother was too old to watch us. So she would watch me. And then my dad would take my brother down the street to across the highway. So it's literally across the highway at my cousin's house. So my brother chimes in. He goes, "He's supposed to be at my grandma's," because my dad had dropped me off there when he was taking my brother to my cousin's. So he knew I was supposed to be at my grandmother's. And she was like, "How'd you get here?" I was like, I don't know. And so she's like, "Don't worry, I got you." And she took my hand and she walked me to her mother's house. And she walked me to the front door and she was like, "Hey, Justin, it was in a field behind the house." She was like, "I found him in a field." And she was like, "I'm going to take him back to his grandma's." And her mother said, "Okay, be careful of that highway." And she was like, "I will." And so she walked me down the road. We got to the highway. We waited for traffic. We crossed the highway. My grandmother must have seen us coming up. So she would wash dishes in the window. And so I think she must have saw us because she met us at the front door. So we walk up. My grandmother opens the front door and she says, she said, "No, I think I'm about to get in a lot of trouble, by the way." And all she said was, "I thought you were going to your aunt's house." So my cousin said, "I found him in the field behind my house." And my grandmother looked down at me and said, "I thought you were going to your aunt's house." And all I said was, she didn't answer. And she said, "Okay, come in, it's dinner time." And then my cousin, she said, "Thank you." And then my cousin started to turn around and leave. And she said, "Be careful of that crossing that highway." They both said the same thing, like verbatim. Like my aunt and my grandmother said the exact same thing. And so anyway, my cousin leaves. She brings me in and she sits me in my grandfather's chair at the head of the table, which you're not allowed to sit there. At lunchtime, it's okay because he's not home or whatever. But so she sits me there and serves me dinner. So I know that this is I was probably missing for at least 4 hours, maybe between 4 and 5 hours. Because I probably got down there probably like 12:30, I'm guessing, even with stopping because of that guy. Like it's not even a 15-minute walk. So it's just 1 mile. It's not that far. So I'm guessing I'm probably 4 to 5 hours, call it 4.5. So anyway, she brings me in, she feeds me. And so I start eating. My grandfather comes home like within minutes of all this. And so I'm terrified. I'm like, she's going to tell him and I'm going to get beat like right now. So he comes in and she goes, "Move out of your grandfather's chair." And he said, No, it's fine. I'll sit next to him." And she's like, "What?" And so he sits down next to me. And so even I'm like, what is going on? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And so he gets fed and he starts making faces at me, sticking his tongue out, messing with me, doing this stuff. And then, and my dad comes home right? So we're eating together. My dad comes in, and I was like, this is it. She's My grandmother definitely is going to tell my father. And so he comes in. He had stopped at my cousin's, picked up my brother, and then came up. He had driven to our driveway and walked over to get me. So my brother was already taken home. But anyway, he walked over. He comes in and he goes, "Okay, come on, finish your dinner or whatever. Come on, let's go home." And then I'm thinking, "Okay, it's over." And he takes my hand and he starts walking out my grandmother's house. And then, and I'm sorry, I'm starting to panic. And then the door shuts, and that's it. And so as we're walking back home, I'm like, this is impossible. I don't understand. And I'm trying to come up with a reason of like, why wouldn't my grandma tell on me? She didn't tell my grandfather. She didn't tell my father. And the only thing I could think was, this is how young my brain was. Like kids believe all this dumb stuff because they don't understand context and stuff. One time, my grandmother took me to the grocery store, and she was holding me really tight. She was just afraid of something, but anyway, she said, if I ever lost you, your father would be very angry with me. And so as he's walking me home, I was like, she must be afraid of my father, because she must have not wanted to tell him that she lost me, because he would like beat her up or something. Like my dad would get angry and beat her up. And so I was literally, this is how stupid I am. Like, yeah, my dad will beat my grandmother up. That's why she's so scared. And I was like, so she doesn't want to tell me, she doesn't want to get in trouble. And that was my little kid brain trying to understand why I wasn't like nothing that happened that day happened the way that it should. Even my cousin, like she remembers that. She remembers finding me back there, or at least she did years ago. I mean, I haven't talked to her in a long time, but yeah, I mean that happened, and I don't know, I don't know. I mean, I only have a few seconds of seeing the. I probably have several minutes of seeing the craft, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes, because it took me so long to walk over there. I only have a few seconds of seeing the creatures. I don't know what they did to me. I don't know where they took me. I don't know. I don't know how I got in that field. I have no. I just have a big 4-ish hour chunk of missing time. But yeah,
So let's talk about your father's abduction, I think at the age of 5, I believe.
yeah, that's a good one. So it's all of these UFO things happened on this plot of land, right? So the creature was the that I talked about a few, not last story, but the story before that, was right there on our property. Another UFO I saw behind the house, maybe like 40 feet away, and then on this and where I saw the UFO land with my grandmother when I walked away from her house, that was a mile down, but it's all on our street in these fields that are around here, like all of it, up until I turned 21. Right. So what happened was my dad used to just drive. So he would get angry and have an argument with my mom, and he would go take a joyride. And sometimes he'd just do it for fun. And most of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10, he would put us in his truck, go to the end of the driveway, and he'd turn down that road where I said that at the end they had that little community. That road goes to the ocean. So there's a small community, and then it breaks into a dirt road, and then goes to a dock that's right there on the bay. So we used to just take joy rides down this road all the time. Sometimes my dad would like drag us, like we'd hold on to the tailgate and stand on our skateboards, and he'd drag us down this dirt road, or he'd put us on the hood sometimes and drive and do this, and very dangerous farm type growing up. I busted my 2 front teeth out on a dirt bike in the same field right across from my house when I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I busted both my front teeth out. But anyway, this is important, because what happened was my dad was on the phone and he was arguing with my mom. So she had left. So I was definitely 5 when this happened. I was in kindergarten. So he's arguing with her. They're yelling at each other on the phone. I kind of got trapped outside. So the rule is that you go out until the sun comes down, right? And sometimes my dad would let us play after the sun goes down. Like he would be like, okay, you have 1 hour or something, but you can only play in front of the house where the light's at, or, whatever. But anyway, so I was playing outside by myself, and my dad was on the phone yelling at my mom. They were arguing. Um, so I didn't want to go in because he would do this thing where he put his arms up against the door, and he'd have the phone and and he would look out the window of the front door. So he was kind of blocking the door, and I never wanted to be around the arguing and stuff anyway. So the sun had gone down. I was supposed to go inside, but because he was blocking the door, I didn't. So I was just playing, waiting for him to get off the phone. And then when he got off the phone, he was like, I don't give a dang, whatever. He slams the phone down, boom, and he rips the door open and slams it, boom, and he steps outside. And so the moment he steps outside, he starts to angrily march towards his truck. And he just so happened to see me out of the corner of his eye. And so he points at me and he goes, "Hey!" And I'm like, oh no, I'm about to get in a lot of trouble. And then he went, "Get your ass in the truck." And I went, "Oh, do I have to?" And he said, "Get your ass in the truck before I beat it." And then so I went over, and I was so short that I couldn't get up in the truck by myself. So he had to open the side door and he kind of angrily tossed me up in there and slammed the door. Boom, slams the door. He goes around, gets in, and then he kind of does a 3-point turn out of the driveway, right? And so I go, where are we going? That's all I said to him. I was like, "Where are we going?" He stopped for a second at the end of the driveway, and like he was contemplating maybe where and then he made a right-hand turn. As soon as he made the right-hand turn, I know where we're going because there's no other place to go. It's a dead end. So what we would do is we would go down there, turn around, and come back. And so it's about it's 3.6 miles, I think, or maybe it's 1.6 down, 3.2, something like that. So anyway, he turns, and then he's still angry. And so I had asked him, "Where are we going?" And then he goes, "None of your business," or something like that. None of your business, right? And so I'm just sitting there on the seat. And then he kind of started to calm down, and he goes, "We're just taking a drive." Yeah, I already realized that, he didn't have to say it at that point. So anyway, I was so short at the time that I would sit on my knees. And he never made us wear seatbelts at all. We were farm kids. You didn't wear seatbelts. You didn't wear helmets, you know. So I'm so short, I can't see over the dash. So the only way I can see is to sit up on my heels, like have my knees down. And so I'm sitting, and I immediately see an orange light in the field. It's in the far field. It would be straight across from where I saw that other UFO, and when I walked away from my grandmother. It would just be in the field, literally right across the road. So that one was here, this one is here, and so we're driving, getting closer to it like this, and so I go, "Hey, what's that?" And he was still pretty angry, so he just kind of looked over. He didn't even notice it. He was so angry. He looked over and he went, "It's a ghost," and he just kept driving. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, he meant it." I've had other people say like maybe he thought it was a ghost. I was like, no, my father's just being a smartass. So he just kind of blew it off. He's like, "It's a ghost," or whatever, and he kept driving. The road kind of turns a little bit, like I said, that has that turn. So as we come around the turn, now we're getting closer, and this thing is clearly pretty big. And we're getting closer and closer. The view of it is getting better and better. And we had turned from it, instead of it being off to our left, we have now turned where it's kind of right almost in front of us as we're approaching it. And so he starts doing this. He starts looking over, and he mumbled to himself, and he's like, "What?" He said, I think he said, "What in the Sam hell is that?" And we got really close to it. We got probably less than 100, maybe 100 yards, less than 100 yards. And he stopped. He pulled into the wrong lane. He just drifted over into the left lane, and then drifted over even further into the ditch. And he just stopped with half, probably almost 3/4 of his truck into the ditch, and maybe his right two wheels on the road, or maybe half, I don't know. But He definitely had his left two wheels in the grass off the side of the road. And he stops, and now this thing is parallel to us. So he's turned this way, and I had kind of grabbed the back of the seat and stood up to look over because he turned. So I had to look over his shoulder to see it. Um, so he's looking out his driver's window, and he's going, "What the hell is that thing?" It was kind of moving like left and right, kind of bobbing like that. Anyway, all of a sudden, the moment he said that, it was like it heard us. It was like they heard what he said, and it started coming closer to us. It went around the corner of the field, and then there's like a little hedgerow that kind of juts out. So it kind of comes up to the hedgerow, and then it goes left around it. But it's like following the edge of the field, right? Like if you were going to drive a car, you wouldn't drive into the trees, you would drive around the edge. So anyway, it starts doing this, and as it comes up to that hedgerow, this big spotlight shines out of it, and it sweeps through the trees, and then it makes two fast-paced movements. It made one to the left, or our left, and then one straight towards us. And once it did that, it like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall, it just went bink, bink, and now it's got this spotlight, this yellow. It's almost like a laser. It's so the intensity of it looks like a laser beam, but in like a cone, like a flashlight. And my dad literally put his hand up to block his eyes because it was so bright. So he's kind of got one hand on the steering wheel and he's blocking his eyes. And this thing lands right there, maybe 15 feet, I'm guessing. Maybe even less. But anyway, probably call it 15 to 20 feet from the edge of this object to the edge of my dad's truck. And it lands, door opens up, and one creature comes out, and then several more come out and go to my dad's side. So I kind of kept my eyes on the first creature because it was the first one. And it also happened to be the one. It walked right in front of my dad's truck. Both his high beams were on, or both his lights were on. It walked 2 feet, 3 feet in front of his lights. So we got perfect, we were 4 foot away. It's standing right in the light. We got a perfect view of this thing. And so it kind of just bobs. His head bobs up above my dad's his hood as this thing walks around and comes to my side. So I turned from the other two that had come down to go to my dad's side. I turned and, because this thing's coming to my door. So I just like, I can't even think of the word, but addressed it, I guess, like, if you were getting in a fight and there were 3 guys and one of them came right up to you, you wouldn't be, so this thing's coming towards me. So I turned, I'm standing up on the seat now, and this thing got a few inches from my face and it started talking to me. First thing it said was, don't be afraid of me, no harm. At that time, they started taking my dad out the driver's seat. So the truck shakes. My dad's a big man, so when he gets in and out, and then he starts arguing with them about not wanting to go. And he's like, my son, I don't want to leave my son. And they're like, don't worry, we're going to have somebody watch over him and until you come back, till they bring you back. I believe this is telepathic. Well, I don't want to say that. I think maybe my dad said some of these things with his mouth because that's what he's used to. He's used to speaking with his mouth. But I think they were telepathically, like, I don't even know how to describe hearing this conversation. But anyway, they assured him that I would be fine and that they were leaving somebody with me to look over me, and they took him away. And so I kind of readdressed the creature that was next to me, and he just started asking me all sorts of questions. He asked me what we were doing, where we were going. He asked me how old I was. He knew about school. So he asked me if I was in school. I said yes. He asked me what grade I was in. I told him I was in kindergarten. And he said he did not know what that was. And I explained to him that I explained it to him the same way my dad explained it to me, was that it was the grade below first grade. And that because my dad had said to me, next year you go to kindergarten. And I was like, what's kindergarten? And he was like, it's the grade before first grade. Your brother will go to second grade. He's in first grade now. He will go to second grade and you will go to kindergarten, which was where he went last year. That was the way my dad explained it to me. And so I told the creature that. He really wouldn't let me ask any questions. He kind of bombarded me with questions really fast. Um, he was clearly, the question I asked him was, I was like, who are you? And I don't think he ever gave me a straight answer that I remember, but he said, yeah, he was very old and he had been here for many, like hundreds of years, I think like 800 years, right? That he, or no, excuse me, that's not correct. Um, that's not the way, that's not the right way of explaining it. It was like he was saying he was 800 years old, but he had been here for thousands of years. And it's very hard to explain this. It's like he had 800 years underneath of him, but he had been here since the time of the pyramids. And he showed me, like, telepathically the pyramids. It was like I was standing a good distance away and you could see the three of them in the distance. And he was saying he had been here since the time of the pyramids, which is thousands. Like when I try to explain this to people, I'm like, he said he was hundreds of years old, but he said he had been here since the time of the pyramids. And I was like, I don't know how to rectify those two things. The only way that I can describe it to people is when they get in these craft, you walk in and several minutes pass, hours pass outside. And that's the only way that I did not conceptualize it as a child. Like this, I'm just repeating what happened when I was a kid. Like, so anyway, I called him a little old man because he said he was hundreds of years old. He was short, he was completely bald, and he's telling me, a child, that he is hundreds of years old. So I'm like, oh, he's older than my grandfather. Like he's has many years more than my grandfather. That's how a little kid is trying to, analyze this. Could he have been lying? Yes. He could have been 5 days old. I don't know. But anyway, that's the only questions that I really asked him. Oh, and I asked him for my dad. I got scared, so I wanted my dad, and he said, do not be afraid. No harm will come to him. Um, he said, no harm will come to him, and he will be returned shortly, something like that. And then I asked him for my mother, and it was like he could read my mind, because. So I asked for my dad, and he said he'll be back soon, basically. And then I asked for my mom. He said nothing. He didn't say anything. It was as if he knew that my mom had left and that there was nothing he could say. Like, yeah, or maybe he just didn't. I don't know. But it was kind of strange that he didn't make any comment after that. What else? What else did he say? He said a bunch of things. He mostly asked me, oh, I know. He asked me where we were going. And I was like, we're going to the end of the road. And he was like, why? And I was like, we're just taking a drive. And he was like, that makes no sense. And he said, you would expend time and energy to move from one location to another. He's like, for no reason. He's like, and then he insinuated that perhaps my father had not informed me of why we were really going there. He was like, he said something like, you are a child, but perhaps your father knows the reason. And since you are a child, he's not given it to you. And I got upset by that. And I was like, no, we're going for a ride. You know how little kids get combative? I was like, no, we're going for a ride. And he let me know that did not make sense to him, to expend time and energy to go from one place to another for seemingly no value. There was no reason in doing it. And I was like, that's what we're doing. And he literally kept telling me how confusing that was, that it made no sense to him. Anyway, after a while, he asked me several questions. I did get to answer, or I did get to question him a little bit, but like who he was, I don't even remember what he said. He just said he was very old. He had been there since the time of the pyramids. And then I think that's pretty much it. That's all I can really remember. But anyway, so after a few minutes of talking to him, all of a sudden I blacked out. I didn't really black out. It's hard to describe. It's almost like somebody put their hands over my eyes. Like I lost vision for some reason. So I'm standing right next to him. He's asking me questions and stuff, and all of a sudden I just lose vision. But then I hear my dad coming back. I hear him open the door. I feel the truck shift as he gets in. And then all of a sudden it was like my vision came back. Like it went from blurry to I could see again. And I was in the exact same spot that I was. But my first reaction was, I was like, where's the little man go? So I'm looking for him. and my dad just starts beating me. He's hitting me, and he's yelling. He's hitting me on my back, and he's going, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. And I literally, it wasn't funny at the time, but none of it was. But um, so sometimes it's hard to express to people these things, because to them they're like, I've told stories about my father and like, I can't believe you went through that. And for me, this is just what happened. Like, this is the family that I had. So for me, it's normal. And I tell a story to somebody and people are like appalled. They're clutching their pearls. They're like, I can't believe he would do something like that. He got in that truck and he was beating me because he was trying to knock me down onto my butt. I was standing up holding the windowsill, and I guess I was kind of semi unconscious when he first got in the truck. So he's trying to get me to sit down and I'm not responding. And then when I finally did kind of, regain consciousness or whatever you want to call it, my first reaction was, where did the little man go? Like, so I wasn't even paying attention to my father. He's beating me and I'm just taking it, not even thinking. But he keeps saying, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. And he's just hitting me, boom, boom, boom. And the one time he swiped me hard enough and he got me at a good angle, he physically flattened me. Like, he physically knocked me down to my butt. And then he just peeled out. He jerked his truck onto the road. He ran from the ditch where he was parked all the way across to the other ditch, jerked it back into the center of the street, slammed on the brakes. I slid off the seat and kind of crumpled underneath the dash, like onto the floor. I literally slid off to the feet, hit my head on the dash, crumpled underneath of it. And he said, hold on. He jammed it in reverse and started spinning the wheel. And so I had enough time to climb back up because he's so scared, and he's like, he has no traction. Like, his tires are just spinning. So I climb back up. He does a 3-point turn. He backs up onto that dirt road that I told you I saw the other UFO on. He kind of does here's the main road, here's that dirt road. He pulled his truck around, stopped, backed up on that road, and then turned around. Because it's a dead end, he has to turn around. So he does this very dangerous and ridiculous 3-point turn, and then he peels out. He gets onto the road and starts fishtailing because he's just jamming on the gas so hard. And that's when I see the craft. So it hadn't flown away yet. It was, at this point, it was flying. It was a few yards away from the road, and it was kind of weird. Here's the road. We're going this way, straight ahead. And it's kind of going at a V, like almost parallel to us, but just separating like that. So it's crossing the field a few feet off the ground, flying towards the trees that are several hundred yards away. And my dad is just panicking. So he got the truck up to like probably over 100 miles an hour, probably 100-ish. And then there's that turn that I was telling you about. He took that turn so hard that he slid off the road. He jumped the ditch. He ended up in the field. He jumped the ditch again, ended up back onto the road, and starts fishtailing. And he yelled out. He literally screamed. He was like, hold on, we're going to crash. He's like, I'm going to flip it. And all the tires are squealing as he comes around the turn. And literally, he got so lucky. Like, I cannot tell you how lucky he got. So when, I was watching the UFO fly away, right? So I'm just watching that. When he screamed, I turned to him. We slid, boom, 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 all around. And then when he regained control and I turned back, the UFO was gone. I have no idea where it went. I don't know if it shot off really fast. I don't know if it turned the lights off and I just couldn't see it because it was dark outside. I don't know. But by the time I turned back around, it was gone. He pulled in the driveway. And he was going so fast that he slid probably 30 or 40 feet past his parking spot, and he almost ran into our house. He stopped like inches, like maybe a foot before running into our house. Like, he literally yelled. He was, oh my God, we're going to hit the house. He slid. He was going so fast when he pulled in that he just slid like easily 30, probably maybe even 50 feet. But anyway, he did stop short. Thank God he didn't. He almost ran into his own his own bedroom. That's where he would have smashed into, like the Kool-Aid man. He would have smashed into his own bedroom. So he just, God's grace or whatever you want to say, luck, he barely stopped in time. And as soon as he did stop, he just starts screaming. He's like, go, go, get in the house, go, go, go. So we run inside. He's like, get in there, get in there. He slams the door, locks it, and then he's just looking outside to see if they like followed us or something. He's having a complete like mental breakdown. Like really, I've never seen my father afraid before, like ever. I mean, he's having like a full breakdown. So anyway, I'm standing behind him. He's panicking, like looking for a UFO. I guess he's afraid maybe they'll come back or whatever. But anyway, I go, Dad, what was that? And he just starts screaming at me. He's like, get your ass in your bedroom and go to sleep. And he's just yelling at me. So I turn around and go to my room and I just start crying. I'm like, like a little kid. He yelled at me. So now I'm already, I wasn't scared because I was a kid and I didn't understand what was going on. Like I it was, everything was weird, but it wasn't, I wasn't afraid at that point. I didn't start getting scared of the creatures till I got older, when I started remembering some of the procedures and things like that. As a kid, I had no fear of them whatsoever at that age. So I was crying because my dad yelled at me, not because of all the chaos or whatever. But anyway, I went to bed, and the next morning, my grandmother came over to watch me. So she came over to, I don't know where my brother was. I don't know where either one of my brothers were. I think I have no idea. I can only speculate. At this time, my mom still had some shared custody. It is very possible that she had my brothers, or somebody else had them, or it's possible that they woke up and went to my cousin's house before I woke up. I don't know. But the next morning, I woke up and my grandmother had come over to pick me up from my dad. She had walked over from her house. And so I was telling her what happened. And I was like, there's this little man and this thing, and it was flying, and dad almost crashed the truck and whatever. And my dad was getting ready in the bathroom, and he heard her, he heard me telling her. And he stomped up behind me. He grabbed me by my arms and kind of flipped me like this, like spun me around. And he grabbed my biceps and he started shaking me. He started yelling at me, and he was like, don't you tell anybody about that. He was like, don't tell your friends, don't tell your teachers. And he said, don't even tell your family. And he said, if you tell anybody what happened, he said, they will come and take you away. He said they will come and take me to a loony bin, and then I'll never see you again, something like that. And then he's like, do you understand me? And I was like, yes. And he let me go, and it angered him. So he went over and slammed the door. Boom. My grandmother didn't say a word. She literally, like, even when I was talking to her about what happened, she didn't say anything. She was like, okay, and then what, kind of thing. And then when my dad spazzed out, and so he gets in his truck, slams the door, peels out, my grandmother just turned, as soon as he pulled out, my grandmother just turned to me and said, you want to go to my house? And I was like, yeah. And she took me over to her house. But yeah, that was when my dad and I, and we never had full conversations about it later. We did talk about this stuff later, like especially when I was in my late 20s, but we never had a moment where I was like, hey, tell me, what do you think? Or what, I don't know. I think the best way to describe it is he admits to it privately. He doesn't like to talk about it much, but he does admit that these things happened. It's not like he's like, if you called him, I'd be very surprised if he would talk to you about it. But when I was in my late 20s, my girlfriend and I had a UFO encounter, and we went over to my dad's house right after it happened. And I was telling him about it. And for the first time in my life, I saw my dad talk about and admit to these encounters in front of what I would consider a stranger. Like he talked about it in front of my girlfriend. Like he fully admitted to these things right in front of her. And I was like, where is this coming from? The man that I knew, I mean, he would talk to my mom about it, maybe he would talk to his mom about it, my grandmother, his mom. But he wouldn't, if you were outside the family, like there's no question, he would never tell anybody. Like he kept it in the family for years. And then for some reason in my late 20s, he started to talk about it. I don't know if he'd ever be interested in doing a podcast. I don't think he would, but it would, let me put it like this. I bet my life that he wouldn't want to go on TV or television or the internet and talk about it. But he does talk about it from time to time. Like he admits that it happened. He just doesn't want the world to know, if that makes sense. Like it's not a secret in our household. It's just more about, I think he's afraid that people would judge him and make fun of him and stuff like that. And it scares him to, also, his father told him, don't talk about this stuff because the government will come and they'll shut you up and stuff like that. So I think he was raised at that time where he would talk about like Project Blue Boat. You know how they would say like, oh, it's swamp gas, right? Or it's a hot air balloon reflecting off the whatever. And my father used to make fun of that. And like if we had a UFO sighting, he'd be like, oh, it's just a hot air balloon or something. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like that thing just shot, but he would say stuff like that constantly when we were kids. So I think he was a part of that generation from like Project Blue Book, where the government clearly was lying. And he was like, he was not, he's not a stupid, it's just kind of like when he said it was a ghost, right? But he's a smartass. He knows that thing is in a weather balloon. He's just being a smart. That's who my dad is. But I think he was really afraid of the government finding out. I think he was really afraid of the consequences of, people that didn't know him finding out. Like he was really scared about letting it out to people outside the family. It's not that he doesn't admit to it. I think it's just he's part of that generation where they're like, you can't talk about it because the government will silence you. They will silence you and they'll put out all this BS, and then you'll kind of risk your family and your credibility, your job. And I think he got that sort of mentality in his head from like the 60s, 70s. And so he said stuff to that effect to us growing up. Like, don't tell anybody. He would make fun of he would make jokes about the government's explanations of UFOs, but he would be very, very serious. Like, do not tell other people what happened, what we just saw. Don't tell your friends, don't tell your school. It's very important because the government will come and I'll never see you again. And it's, he was very serious about it. But sorry, I didn't mean to ramble off on that. But
Well,
but yeah,
did your father ever get back to you regarding what happened?
you mean from that night?
Yeah.
Or he never told me. I don't know how to explain this. He does not deny that happened. It's just it's not like he's never told me what they did to him. He's never been like, listen, when they took me in there, this is what happened. It's more like he was like, he acknowledged that what happened, but just don't tell anybody. Like, it was like, just keep this between you and me. And he would never open up about what happened once they took him. You know what I mean? Like, he never told me like, this is what they did to me inside. He talked to me about other things. I'll give you an example. He talked to me about other encounters that he had, but he also wouldn't tell me everything about those encounters. Like, and I wasn't there. So he said, yeah, one time this happened. One time that happened. But he would rarely give you in-depth details. Like, he would rarely, I don't even know how to describe it to you. He was kind of like a stone wall, right? My mother is the one that actually told me about some of his encounters, because he did talk to my mother about it. Well, because they were together and they had these crazy encounters, very scary. And so he was honest with he needed help. He was scared, like he was frightened. So who are you going to talk to? Your wife. So when I got older, I had a few encounters, and I was close to my mom. Like my mom left, and then when she came back, we got close because we had all these years where we had no contact and stuff. So when she finally came back in my life, we became very close, her and I. And so I had some encounters, and so I was honest with her about what had happened, and and she said, "Whoa, that happened to your dad," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" I didn't believe her, by the way. Like I literally was like, "No, my dad used to get when they separated. My dad used to get so angry at her, and be like, you're a liar or whatever." So it instilled a distrust in her, in us, like a subconscious kind of, my mom is full of it, she can't be trusted, that type of stuff. Technically that was true, that during that time frame my mother really wasn't, you know she just, it wasn't there, the she wasn't a mother back during that time, so she let us down. you know so it's not that my dad was wrong about those things, like about her lying or whatever, but that was their relationship. So when my mom told me some of these things, I was like, yeah, right. Like I didn't believe it at all. Later on, when I brought it up to my father, he was like, oh yeah, that happened. Yeah, and then he would tell me details, like, yeah, that happened here, and then this is what I saw, but he wouldn't tell me everything. Like you could tell he admitted to what happened, but he would hold back, and he admitted to multiple encounters where I wasn't there. So it's it's kind of like, I don't know. He doesn't deny it, but he doesn't even with family. It seems like he's just, I don't know, maybe I think maybe he's scared and he doesn't want to think about like the bad thing that happened to him. And so like he admits to it, like, yes, that did happen. And then you're like, well, what else? And then he won't tell you. He's like, just, he puts up a wall where he's like, I'm not going to even address what happened after that, or whatever. He's really hard to pin down in that way. My mother wasn't. My mother was super honest. My mother had some strange things happen here and there.
Yeah, I always wondered why you were having these experiences, and clearly it's a generational thing.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah,
So,
my grandfather saw a UFO too.
wow.
I know that for a fact because it was me, my brother, my dad, and then my grandfather. Like I said, he lived next door, so he saw it from his house, and he told me about it the next day. In fact, the reason he told me is because he wanted to know whether I saw it. He was like, "Hey, did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I saw it. Man, I saw it. Dad saw it. So it's, I don't know. I mean, maybe it runs in the male side of the family. It could run. It could run in my mom's side. I don't know, but I definitely know my grandfather has been a witness. I know my father's been a witness. My mother, me, my brother, now my girlfriend, my aunt. Um, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I don't know, but definitely it seems. I mean, I don't know if it's coincidental. I would suspect it's not. I would suspect whatever's going on is when people ask me, I always tell them I think it's some sort of medical or genetic thing, because every time they take you, it's always some physical or psychological. It's almost like a test or something. Like they're always taking skin, semen, blood. They're always poking you with a needle or doing a scan, or like every single time. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every time that I remember, like there's times when you see an object and you black out and you wake up and you go, "What just happened?" You have no idea, right? Is it possible that they took me to the Rainbow Road to get ice cream? And maybe, but I suspect that's not the truth, right? But every single time that I can remember what happened, it's always medically based. It's some sort of medical thing.
Well,
So I,
let's get into that.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, at the age of 7, I think you had an implant put in you.
Yeah, it's probably not going to help you, but it's, yeah. So they took me that night. I don't remember a whole lot, but I woke up I heard a sound. I went over to the window because there was this big bright white light coming in the window. And when I went around the window and looked outside, there was a sphere. It was probably 5 or 6 feet in diameter, and it seemed to be hovering maybe 2 feet off the ground. So it was below the windowsill, right? Because the house is raised up, and then you have, so I'm inside, and it's below me, right? So I'm looking down at it, and it's less than 20 feet from the house, and it was just doing this. It was just going in a circle like that. Somebody said to me, like, well, what if it was something shining down? I can only describe what I saw. And this, to me, looked like a sphere of light, luminous sphere that was traveling. And when it was traveling around that circle, it was leaving like a trail behind it, almost like a comet or something. Or like if you took one of those glow sticks, you spin it real fast to the point that the trail touches the glow stick, where it looks like you have like a solid thing. That's what this thing was doing. And all of a sudden, for some reason, I started to panic. I started to like get scared. And I was like, I got to go tell my dad. And so I turned to go run out the bedroom to tell my father. And then I stopped at the door because I was like, if I tell him, he's going to beat me. So my dad had gotten to the point where I would run into his room in the middle of the night when this stuff would happen. And a few times he would get really angry at me for waking him up, and he would take his belt off his bureau and just belt me and be like, "You're too old for this. You need to sleep in your own room." Blah blah blah. So I ran to the door to go tell him, and then immediately I was like, "Well, he might beat me." So I stopped, and I didn't know what to do, and I was like, "I'm just gonna hide." So I ran over and jumped in the bed and hid under the cover, but I didn't want to cover myself all the way up. So what I did was I kind of put it on my face so I could still see, but I was kind of blocked. And at that point, I heard some people coming in the back door of the house. So that back door has a hallway right outside my bedroom door. And so I heard them walking in the back door across the floor. They turned into the bedroom, and when they turned into the bedroom, they had some lights with them. And I could see the lights sweep across the room, and I could see like the silhouettes inside the light. Like just imagine 3 people walking in a straight line, each one of them holding a flashlight. And then so you have this kind of thing where you have their silhouettes, and then you have this kind of overlap of light, almost like an NBA game. If you ever look at the shadow underneath an NBA player where it's like in different directions, it's because you have these different lights, right? So I see the shadows. I hear them walking up behind me. The floorboards are, creaking, pressing down as they came up. And then they inject me in my back with, I can only imagine it's a needle. That's what it felt like. And then I blacked out. I don't remember them I don't know how to explain this. I knew that they injected something in my leg, but I physically don't remember it. I knew they did it. It's like subconscious. Like I knew that it happened, but I legitimately do not remember the actual injection. So anyway, so I black out. And then when I woke up, I was floating to the ground. I was about 30 feet above the ground. And I was kind of like stiff as a pencil. Like I couldn't move. But I felt like a pressure around me, like a slight pressure, a static energy. And I was kind of in a position where I was staring at my feet, and I could see the light on the ground. So clearly there was something above me pointing a light down. I couldn't move. And I was probably like 30 feet or so. And then it slowly lowered me down. And then as soon as my feet touched the ground, it let go of me. The light shut off, and I just ran for the house. I ran inside. I burst through the front door. I left the front door wide open. I ran into my dad's bedroom, and I ran down the hallway so fast that when I, tried to burst into my dad's room, I broke his doorknob. So there's a plate on the inside of the door. I literally stripped that off and threw the screws into the room because I didn't twist the handle fast enough. So I kind of just barged in. And my dad was asleep. I started yanking on him. And I was like, Dad. He wakes up. He says, What? And I said, Dad, 3 witches with candles took me from my room. And he was like, what? I said, 3 witches with candles took me from my room. And he was like, oh, you're probably just having a bad dream. And he picked me up and he tossed me over his shoulder, and then he just went right back to sleep. And I laid there for probably like 20, 30 minutes staring at the ceiling. I was so scared to fall asleep. Um, the reason I started calling them witches is because my grandmother, she had told me a story. She said that witches have big black eyes and that they can fly, and that they have black magic. They cast magic or whatever. So I was like, oh, they must be witches. So I, for a little period of time, I used to call the gray aliens witches because they're magic and they can fly, you know. So I didn't see witches. That's not what I saw. I saw gray aliens. I started calling them that because I didn't know what they were. But then later on, when you get older and you learn what people call, they say, oh, this is a gray alien. You go, that's what I saw, and then you kind of change the way you describe them. So anyway, yeah, that happened, and I still have that thing. So it's right in my shin. The next day when I woke up, I felt it. Like I bent down and was putting my hand on it. It's like a small, almost like a BB or something. If you took a BB and you kind of hit it with a hammer and kind of flattened it a little bit, and then put it just between the skin of the outer skin and your shin bone, they injected it right there, and they took a scoop of skin right around it, like kind of above it. They took a scoop of skin. Um, and so I've had that thing for like 30 years now. But it's just a little like metal, I don't know. I don't know whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I've never got x-rays of it or anything. But anytime people ask me about it, I just kick my leg up and I'm like, here, you just feel it. It's right there. Everybody knows, that it's there. Like, but yes, that's why I said earlier, it doesn't really help you much because you're, far away. But I've been meaning to get x-rays of it. But I've known about it for years. When you're a kid, it's hard to explain. Like, you've had this thing in your leg forever. It's not really hurt you or anything, and so I've never really just put in any effort of trying to get it imaged or anything. I have tried putting magnets to it, powerful magnets and stuff, and you can feel it if you take a magnet and put it near it, like you could feel it in, like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, imagine having a splinter that was metal and then kind of rubbing a magnet around it. You can literally feel that it's trying to move around, if that makes sense. Like, you can feel it in this hand. You could feel that thing kind of, it's the same thing with this, where it's like if you put up, it has to be a pretty powerful magnet though, like a speaker magnet or something like that. Like a regular fridge magnet doesn't, I think it's just not powerful enough. But yeah, I've had that thing for like 30 years in my leg.
Did you ever find out what the purpose of that implant was?
No, I don't know. I guess I've only speculated that it's maybe tracking would be my best guess. But the truth is, I have no idea. I have no idea what any of them. Over the years, I've been injected a few times, and with these things. Like, I have no idea what any of them are really for. The problem, I don't know how to explain this. So I thought, like, well, maybe it's for telepathy, right? So I was like, well, maybe this is how the telepathy works: is that they're sending a radio signal to your central nervous system. But from my earliest age, like, I had no problem communicating with them. So, I thought maybe that might explain telepathy, but then I was like, well, maybe they abducted me earlier and gave me something or whatever. I really don't know what the purpose would be. I can only speculate. The thing that makes most sense to me is maybe to track you. Another thing that makes sense is maybe to gather biological information, because they inject you in different places. Like, they did one in my thumb, they did the one on my shin, they did one kind of low on my calf muscle. They injected me in between my toes, my left foot. I've also been injected in between my pointer and right finger. I've had something, they stabbed me with this thing on my shoulder one time, or my elbow one time. I don't know if they injected anything, but it definitely, it burned me. So it could have, I don't know. But over the years, they've done it several times. And if it's a tracking device, why would you need seven tracking devices? Um, if it's for telepathy, why would you need seven telepathic transmitters or whatever? Um, my best guess is that they are some sort of biological implant of some kind, where they are tracking different aspects, perhaps could be temperature, could be heart rate, could be could maybe some type of chemicals, or some sort of environmental factor, or radiation, or because they do that with animals. Like if you want to test the, let's say, the amount of or let me just use humans. Like, so you got a human and you want to test how much radiation absorption from a phone, right? So they put one here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and here. And then over the course of years, now they know that the phone is, emitting this much. But by the time it gets, let's say, 2 feet away, it's negligible. By the time you get to your feet, the implant in your foot is picking up zero radiation transmission from your phone, right? So that gives them a kind of parameter to look at. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe they are all maybe they're all looking at something completely different. But I cannot imagine that they are. Somebody said to me that they might be medicine of some kind. They said, they inject you with this thing, and after a certain period of time, it kind of breaks down in your system. And so it's like you might think of it as like an autoimmune medication, where it's like changing your autoimmune system, or it might be counteracting some other, maybe like with a certain types of imaging, they'll inject you with a dye that has heavy elements like iron, or whatever. So it might be to counteract, it might be a medicine that counteracts one of their tests. Maybe they have to give you something to do a test, and they say this guy needs this thing, so that way he doesn't get cancer, or doesn't get sick, or he needs to reboot his autoimmune system, since we did this high powered x-ray test that destroys white blood cells or something. I've heard lots of things, but I'm suspecting that they are technological. I would suspect that they are biological, like, so they're a technological biological detector. Do I think that they can be used for GPS? I actually do. I think if they're transmitting, regardless on what kind of transmitting they might be doing, they might be transmitting in a in a way that we don't recognize. Like people talk about quantum transmissions and stuff. Some people talk about scalar, whatever. I think that it's a very high probability that you could consider it a type of tag, like you tag an animal. It might have multifunction, and it might be able to be used as some sort of GPS or tracking device. But I don't, there's no way for me to know. It would just be my suspicion.
You describe the grays in detail that you've seen so far?
Yeah. Um, I would honestly call them the atypical gray alien, but they're not really gray. Some of them are a white bluish kind of color, um, but the most of the ones that I've seen, I would say, kind of, if you take like an off white, like a pearl white, and you overlay it over like a baby blue color, and then when you hold that kind of far away from you, it does look gray. When you're up close to them, you could clearly see that I wouldn't call them gray. Like I would say that they're like I wouldn't call myself white. I mean, we refer to ourselves as white people, but I'm not white. Like, I'm pink and yellow, and I got some browns and blues in there. Um, I've seen two different types of these 4 foot tall grays. I've seen this brown skin, or what you might call tan skin, and I've seen these ones that are like blue. It's like they have a white, very thin white skin with like kind of like speckled blue color. When they stand back away from you, you might call them gray. Same thing with the tan ones. In the dark, like if you're outside and it's dark outside, the tan ones you would almost call like a medium gray or so, or like a dark gray color at nighttime. But when you get close to them and you're actually like, let's say in a craft and it's illuminated, you can very clearly and obviously see that it's more like the tan ones are probably more like this color, like this Amazon bag, maybe a little bit darker. And the blue ones, I don't think there's anything in here, but they're more of a soft kind of pearl, like that kind of in between those two colors, white, like a pearl white, and a very light kind of Carolina blue, like a Carolina, the teams, the South Carolina teams. Um, they are. I've seen them. I've seen them as short as probably 3.5 foot tall, but I've also seen them as tall as maybe 5 foot tall. I think they would surprise you. I think a lot of people get this idea that they're really, really small. And then when you actually see them in real life, they're bigger than you'd suspect. Um, but I would say they probably mostly sit around 4 foot is what my guess would be. Probably just about 4 foot. Um, they have an extremely thin neck, like a Campbell's soup can, maybe slightly elongated. Their head is like a bowling ball. If you took like a Campbell's soup can and then put a bowling ball on top of it, that's the way their head is, where their neck attaches to the center of their head, like a bobblehead. Our neck doesn't do that. Our neck goes up to the back of the head. So their neck is attached in a completely different location. Um, their neck is a little bit longer than ours. They have extremely thin, kind of dainty shoulders, like very, like a model with anorexia, kind of those kind of, very thin. They seem to have these tendons in their neck. I don't know if they're veins or if I would suspect that there's some sort of strong tendon. They seem to be much more pronounced than ours. Um, their eyes come from about right here and they wrap around. They're almost at a perfect 45-degree angle to their face. They wrap up around the side, and then their orbital bone is kind of recessed right here. So it's actually like recessed. And so the eye partially wraps around the side of the head. So they seem to have much more periphery vision than we do. In fact, when you stare at them, you can't really tell how, the eyes wrap around, but when they turn to the side, it's really easy to see. Also, their eye bulges slightly. So also when they turn to the side, you can really see how it bulges out. Like ours are inset pretty far, and theirs are not only larger, they're probably about, I should have said this, but they're probably like 3 times our size of our eyes, I'm guessing. Their nose, unlike ours, like we have horizontal eyes like this. They have these almost not vertical, but close to it. And then their nose starts at the very end of their eyes, like the bottom corner of their eye, they have their nose. So it would be more like if their eyes were like maybe here, like that. Their palate it juts out slightly. Like there are some monkey species like this, where it's like the front of their mouth comes out just a little bit like that. Think of a chimpanzee, how its mouth kind of is slightly out. They don't seem to have teeth. I've seen them open their mouths a bunch of times. They don't seem to have any teeth. I don't know why they open their mouths. They do this thing. I call it the O face, where they go like that. I don't know. When I saw them doing it, I'm like, maybe they're you can hear them breathe. So but I think they're breathing through their nose. So you can hear them breathe, and they're not. It's not like it's almost like a cat, I guess, like kind of a regular kind of, not like a. I don't even know how to describe it. not like when your cat's purring, but if you were to listen to your cat just breathing normally, like that kind of vibratory, it reminds me of something like that. Like you can hear them breathe very similar to like a person that has maybe like a slightly raspy voice breathing or something like that, like a very controlled, very kind of slow, kind of uniform, you know, I don't know why I said cat. Cat's the closest thing I can think of is like a kind of controlled, deep, slightly vibrational breathing, but they seem to do it through their nose. But then they open their mouths from time to time. I have no idea why they do that thing. I was thinking maybe they're expelling something, like maybe that's the way they expel waste, or like, we have to breathe out carbon dioxide. So I was like, maybe they breathe into their nose, they absorb the oxygen, and then they breathe. And so when they make that face, maybe that's what they're doing. But the truth is, I have no idea because they don't talk with their mouths. So I don't know why they open their mouths like that. It doesn't make sense to me. But when they do, they have no teeth, bottom or top. I saw no teeth. I didn't even notice a tongue. It's possible that they have a tongue, but I didn't notice one. So I can't say for sure. But let me put it like this. Every time I've seen them open their mouths, I've never noticed a tongue. So I would suspect they don't have one. Oh, they don't have any eyelids. Um, I've not seen any eyelids whatsoever, top, bottom, left, right. But when they do want to look at something, they will squinch the muscles around their eye, and it like opens and closes their eye a little bit. But I've never seen them blink ever. I've never seen them close any eyelids. You don't even, you can see our eyelids. I said this to somebody else. I said, the only thing that I can think of, if they do have eyelids, let's just say that they do. The only thing I could think of is that would be like kind of like a crocodile or something, where the eyelid goes up under, and so that way you can't even see it. You know what I mean? Like some reptiles have that, but to be honest with you, my I've never seen them blink, and they clearly don't have any visible eyelid. I would suspect they're more like geckos, and they do not have an eyelid. That would be my suspicion. Um, Maybe it's incorrect, but what else? The ones that I saw had three long fingers with extra bones in it. Um, I think probably they might even have five bones in their finger. I didn't count. I didn't have a chance to say like, hold on a second, let me count the phalanges. But I'm guessing that those three fingers had probably five bones in their hand, and then they had a fourth finger that seemed kind of like an ambidextrous thumb. It was not as long as the other three fingers, not by a mile. I mean, the three main fingers are extremely long, and they had this thumb that they almost could bend it like flat with the rest of their hand, and it reminded me of somebody that's ambidextrous. Like I felt like that thumb could do whatever it wanted to, if is a best way of describing it. I watched them pick things up by outstretching their fingers, touching the tip of their finger to the object, and then they would roll it back in the palm of their hand. So we pick things up like a pincher, like this. We grab things. They did not hold things like that. They would grab it and they would roll it back into their palm. And they had extremely thin palms of their hand. Their bones almost kind of went in a V shape, like this, where we have these kind of fat, wide mitts. Their palm of their hand seems extremely dainty. It reminded me of some monkey species where they have like really thin fingers and they have this super thin palm. Trying to think of what else. They kind of waddle when they walk, especially when they run, when they move fast. They kind of do this thing like that. It reminds me of maybe like a duck or something, or like a marionette. When you see someone with a marionette, and it's almost this kind of weird, almost floaty. Somebody I was trying to describe it one time. This other guy said, I know this is not going to make sense to anybody. He said, but when they move, he said they jangle. He said they jangle. And the moment he said that to me, I was like, he's right about that. it's not like it's almost like a, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it's not unnatural. It doesn't look unnatural. It just looks like whatever their hip physiology is, whatever their, it's almost like a gorilla that kind of has a slight rotation in the hip when they move, but they do it so effortlessly as they move that it doesn't look unnatural. But there's something, the best way to describe it is like if you saw them walk from point A to point B, they do kind of bob a little bit as well. Their heads bob when they walk, um, or like the way that they move, they kind of have that step where you're. But anyway, if you saw one walk, and I was like, "Hey, describe it," unless if you were some scientist that studies podiatry or something, like the functioning of the evolution of bipedalism, you would notice it, but you don't have words for it. It's outside of your capability to explain. But there is this waddle or bob or you know um, it kind of reminds me like a duck, the way ducks move. Like that's I mean it's not as pronounced as that, but that's kind of one of those. I think it in ducks it's over pronounced.
Are they really different than the tall grays you saw?
Well, I only saw one tall gray that I know of, and I never got to watch it do much, and I blacked out really quick. The tall gray, the okay, so I don't even know if they're related. I would suspect if you ask me, like, okay, you don't remember much of what happened, but just tell us what you think. I would suspect that the tall grays are with them in some capacity. I would say that they are probably biologically related in some capacity because the eyes and kind of like the nose are so similar, right? Like it's kind of like when you have uncanny valley when you look at an animal and it's got a human eye and you look at it and immediately you're like, or like a have you ever seen those pictures where like there's a gorilla hiding in the woods and you can't notice it, but then all of a sudden you see its eyes and you go, oh, it's one of those things where it's like the tall gray's eyes are exactly like the short gray's eyes, like exactly, like perfect, like it's literally copy and paste. But they're skull shaped, their jaw much more robust. Um, their skull looked like human. Like that's the best way I can describe it. It didn't. The short grays kind of have a light bulb shaped head. The tall grays, its head did flare out a little bit, but then it went back to like a cone. I tell people there are these cone headed skulls in Paracas, Peru. I said if you took that thing and you covered it with like a grayish skin, that would be my best explanation to what I saw. Like they're a bulbous, elongated head, but they have like super robust chin. Their neck is very skinny, and it is kind of I think the neck is skinnier than ours, but maybe attached more similarly to the back of their head, like us, would be my best way of explaining it. I didn't get a good look at the hands. Um, I really didn't get I didn't get to see enough of it to. I know a few things. I know it's super tall. I got to see its skull really well. I got to kind of see its shoulder just and its neck really well. Um, but that's it. I don't have much. But I would suspect that they're somehow biologically related. But I just don't. I wouldn't know. Maybe they're not. I don't know.
Justin, let's talk about your book. Was there like a specific reason why you wanted to get your story out?
Uh, yeah, kind of. It's super complex. I think it was maybe a process over many years that led me to publish it. But the I think the short version is that in 2018 I had a UFO encounter in Bayse, Virginia, Bayse, Virginia. In fact, I had several that year in Bayse, Virginia. It was kind of in like February, during the end of winter, beginning of spring. Um, anyway, unlike most of my encounters, after I had one of the encounters, the government showed up. Several military personnel showed up. They kidnapped me. They interrogated me. They threatened me as well as one of my family members. And so when that happened, I kind of clammed up. So it's so complicated. So I had an encounter. I was extremely traumatized, and for the first time in my life, I decided to join a UFO group. And I did that to talk about my encounter with people that also had encounters. It was like a UFO support group. I had another encounter after I joined that group, shortly after, and then the government shows up. I When they showed up and kind of threatened me, I left that support group. I suspected that somebody in that support group may have informed on me. I was hacked. I had some videos and photographs that were I was able to capture some evidence of my encounters in 2018. So I was hacked. My videos and photographs were taken down from online. They were also deleted from my phone. The government showed up. They threatened my family and threatened me and interrogated me. They did a pretty lengthy interrogation about the encounter I had a few days earlier. They wanted to know everything. They want to know who were they? What did they say to you? Did they give you anything? Did you receive anything from them? But anyway, so that silenced me. It did the exact opposite. Instead of putting out a book or writing a book or anything like that, it made me angry, deeply angry at my own government. I mean, I was so furious. You have to understand. I know that UFOs exist because I've seen them. I've seen them with my mom and my dad and my brother and my girlfriend, and I've had close encounters periodically throughout my life. I did not believe that there was some top secret government group running around, chasing UFOs and kidnapping people. If you had told me the day before that these men existed, I would have said you were crazy, right? I wouldn't have believed you, and that's my fault. Like, I should have known better. And the next day, I literally said to myself in the morning, I was like, I'm such an idiot. I should have known, right? Because there are thousands of people that have came forward and said the same thing. And the fact is that even if you can't trust 99% of those people, if only one of them is telling the truth, then you have an issue, right? So chances are that that was true, even before I had any experiences. And then I was like, I should have known that they would have a group like this, because if UFOs are real, which I know that they are, that's exactly what the government would do. If you have nukes or whatever, you're going to put together a team who specialize in nukes, and you're going to give them a bunch of power and a bunch of equipment and training. You're going to give them headquarters. You're going to give them their helicopters and their airplanes and whatever. And you're going to task them you're going to say, hey, these nukes are really dangerous and really, and you guys are the point people to deal with these nukes. So I met what I would call the point people that deal with UFOs in America. At least they were American citizen, or excuse me, they had American accents. They were military people. They were wearing all black fatigues, black boots. They wore no insignia. They wore no name tag. But they were very clearly American military. They were very clearly a covert unit of some kind. And so that made me angry. I immediately was so angry at my country. I felt betrayed. I felt stupid. Like, I should have known that they would have a group like this. I felt surprised. I didn't never believed in a million years this would happen to me. I felt violated. I felt scared, like terrified. Like, I was, after that, for a very long period after that, I could not sleep at night because I was worried that they would come back. With the aliens, it's kind of funny because that used to happen to me when I got abducted with UFOs. Is like, I would get abducted and I'd be really scared because, like, what if they come and take me again? But what I learned over the course of my life is that they would abduct you, and then it'd be like a year or 2 years before it happened again. So it was easier to kind of be like, oh, well, they took me yesterday. So I have like a whole year. I don't have to worry. They'll, for them to come back. But with the government threatening you and your family like that, I felt more threatened by the government than I felt by aliens, by the way. I definitely felt like the men that took me were willing to kill me. It silenced me, is what happened. And then after a few years, I realized that if something happened to me, my neighbor died. And so I saw them throw all his stuff away. He didn't have any close family, and they literally threw everything he owned in a dumpster. They piled it all the way up. And I remember looking at it and saying, if I die tomorrow, then all of what I know, everything that happened to me, will be thrown in a dumpster, and not a single human being on this planet, not a single generation afterwards will know what happened. And so when my neighbor died, I was like, I'm going to publish this. I didn't do it right away. I wrote it in 2020. I was still scared to come forward. I mean, I was really scared. When I finally decided to publish it in 2024, my girlfriend and I literally sat together and I said, hey, I'm going to publish. I've made my decision and I'm going to publish the book. And she literally said, the first words out of her mouth, she said, do you think the Men in Black will come again? Those were the first words out of her mouth. Do you think they'll come again? And I said to her that it really didn't matter because they could come right now. There's nothing stopping it. Whether they come today or come in a month, there's literally nothing that, I told her we'd be much safer off with people knowing that this happened to us than we would be by keeping it secret. So we made the decision to publish it. But yeah, it was I know that's a really long way of telling you why I published it, but yeah, and there's even more stuff. It was a process. Let me put it that way. It was a complete process. It took me 6 years to even consider to publish. Even after I wrote it, for 4 years, I have a book for 4 whole years that I literally was like too scared to publish. So I'm just like holding a book. I've got a book written on a computer, going nowhere, doing nothing, helping no one. And then when I did publish it, I remember it being very important to me that I was like, I don't care if it makes any money. I don't care what happens to it. All I wanted was enough copies to go out into the world where it was like part of the historical record. That was like really important to me. I was like, if I can just get, a few copies out there where it's like, no matter what happens to me, it's now part of our historical record. And unless if we do something really stupid and like wipe out society, it'll be around for thousands of years. Like, not that I think I'm some king or something, and it's the most important thing that's ever happened. But it was really, really important to me that I didn't die with this information. I just don't want to take it with me. I don't want to keep it anymore. This is just a bad situation for all of us to have. We've been put in a pretty sick situation revolving around secrecy. The entire UFO topic is so complicated. There's so many facets, from telepathy to precognition to, some sort of remote transient conscious communication, whether that's technological or not. Some people think it's outside time or dimension. I'm not the right person to ask about those things. But the idea that I would learn, I've gotten a glimpse over many years into this. I've been inside the craft. I touched the walls. I touched the floors. I put my hands on a gray alien. I've physically touched them. They've touched me when they did their operations. I've physically touched them. And the idea that I would endanger people because I'm so selfish. I'm more worried about my own personal safety. And so I would keep this information for myself, and I would endanger all these people just because I'm worried the government's going to spank me. And I'd much rather die, quite frankly. I don't want to be one of those people that's on their deathbed and goes, I have something really important to say. I don't want to live that way. I don't really care what the consequences are. But yeah, it was like a journey to even gaining the courage to publish. So
Well, I appreciate your all the details that you got out today. It really helped to be in the moment,
oh,
really.
yeah,
And
why my nose is running so much.
that's all right. But Justin, thank you so much for coming on. We need you back for part 2 and perhaps even a part 3.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, it's been fun, and thanks again for coming on.
I really appreciate you bringing me.
And to those watching, hope you enjoyed today's interview. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I will see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.